All right, now we're going to hear on opportunities for physicians in clinical research. And we're very pleased to have Dr. Elizabeth Liz Antu as our presenter. Liz is a drug safety physician with Scalera Consulting Group and a clinical investigator with Biofortis Research. She has therapeutic experience in rare diseases and gene modulation therapies. She's a board-certified family medicine physician and has 20 years of experience in clinical medicine, including practice in urgent care, OCMED, and private practice. She obtained her medical degree from Manipal Academy of Higher Education, which is affiliated with Loma Linda University of Medicine. She completed a residency training in family medicine at Lutheran General Hospital in Illinois. Dr. Antu volunteers with Latin American Medical Providers, an organization which provides medical and surgical services to an underserved area in Jalapa, or Jalapa, I think probably more properly, Guatemala. She is also the author of the screenplay, which recently wrapped, where you can see her beaming over there, for an independent film, Text M for Murder. And we don't quite know where they're going to distribute that yet, but it's going to go to streaming. So we're looking forward to that. Anyhow, thank you very much, Dr. Antu.
Oh, thank you, Jim, for that amazing introduction. Wow. All right. Jim did a really good introduction, so I really don't have a lot more to say. I do call myself a Sikh alumni from the year 2022. And at that time, I was kind of like a recovering family physician. And now, since I'm recovered, I'm a clinical research physician and also as a drug safety physician. So I was asked to speak about the opportunities for physicians in clinical research. And so let's get started. So a little bit of background. I think Jim did go into it. I basically grew up in Chicago, went to med school in India, which was kind of a culture shock. I mean, at least they taught in English, but they had these really thick accents. And I remember this really funny story about a pharma teacher that came in and put slides up, and he had this slide of like this plaque rash. And he basically said, so this patient has psoriasis. And I went, wow, I cannot go back home and be like, you got psoriasis. But it is a funny story, so I thought I'd share. But after coming back, I did do family medicine residency at Lutheran General in Park Ridge. From there, I kind of moved into urgent care, did a little occupational medicine, and then became the occupational medical director at Lutheran for a number of years. And in that meantime, my husband is also a family physician. He does inpatient and outpatient. So we were both working very full time. And then we ended up having children. And so my younger one is a 24-weeker, was in the NICU for 5.5 months. And so with us both working full time, I kind of had to do the physician mom balancing act and figure it out. And so basically decided to possibly start going part-time for a little while. So I went into a practice part-time, and it was good for a while. And then, the demands of kids and health and the clinic, admin, COVID, it all takes a toll on you, and you feel like you can't give 100% at work and 100% at home. So I kind of started looking to figure out how to manage all of this, and is kind of what brought me to Seek and to look at other career choices. For me, the most important thing was really finding more flexibility in my schedule, decreasing the amount of stress because you already have enough. Working as part of a team was really fun for me, so I wanted to try to continue that. And then I still felt like I'm not done with medicine. I want to contribute to science. I want to continue to learn, but I also want something that'll give me longevity, growth, and stability. So I didn't know where to start. I really thought maybe I'll try pharma because it seems kind of fun. I'll try some research. And so basically, since I started talking to people, telling them like, hey, I'm thinking of leaving clinical medicine. What do you think is out there, And through contacts, I really learned about pharma and about the Seek conference. And I started as a consultant with Scalera Consulting Group, doing drug safety. And it was a really great experience. It gave me a year to work remotely from home and kind of get my head above water, tried it out as a side gig to see if I'd like it or not. And I felt like I was learning, I was growing, and I was able to get back to some of my hobbies. So basically, this talk is kind of about what positions are available for physicians, as well as how to get your foot in the door. Clinical research is kind of a broad topic, so it kind of has a lot of buckets under it. So let me try to describe it a little bit better. It's the study of safety and effectiveness of new treatments, medical devices, techniques involving human participants. So anytime you have human health and understanding of disease involved, you really do need doctors. They're crucial in this kind of role because they ensure that patients are safe, that we're adhering to protocols that are keeping our patients safe. We're collecting data that is reliable and accurate, and really collaborating with these teams that are already in place to advance their medical knowledge based on your medical expertise to improve patient outcomes. So some of the paths that are a good way into clinical research, there's multiple ways, and there's lots of organizations, which I never knew about until I actually stepped foot into it. If you're in clinical medicine, hospitals and clinics also can integrate clinical research into their clinical practice, and this is public because your patients can come and want to be part of a study. Academic or university centers is also public. They conduct research and provide patient care, and so you could choose or volunteer to be a part of that. CROs are contract research organizations. They conduct clinical trials for pharma companies and food companies. So that's what Biofortis is. It's a CRO. A lot of these pharma companies, once the drug that they've taken or studied has done lab and animal studies, they move it to human studies, and they need CROs or organizations to conduct these trials for us. And so this is where it's a good start to walk into if you're interested in switching over to clinical research. Pharma companies are pretty big and a little overwhelming, but they do develop drugs and therapies, and they're more private, but there's jobs available there. And then government agencies which conduct research, and then they basically look at regulatory stuff. So it's public and it's more government based on continuing to stand to certain standards and guidelines. Some of these I can go into in more detail. So clinical research, there's a lot of fields, and I kind of broke it down into certain buckets. The top two, clinical trials and pharmacovigilance, are the ones at least I know the most about because that's what I do. But there are other openings for physicians in biostatistics, regulatory affairs, and medical writing. Skills and qualifications. Basically, it's good to have an MD or DO for all of the clinical roles because they really want you to be board certified and licensed because they're using that as like credibility for their studies and for what they do. Board certification is important. I know there are some questions about people who do MBBS and haven't done residency or finished like medical, the completion of it to the complete working in practice and stuff. And there are positions for those people. I'm not saying there isn't, it's just that it might be harder to find, but definitely look because it's out there. Sometimes for pharma, specialty is nice to have, like if you're a neurologist or a GI or a hemonc. Pharma drug companies do have things in their pipeline for those drugs, and they're looking for specialties. And a lot of times for GPs, it's nice because we can do a lot of it, but we're not specialized. So there's options for both. Really, one of the qualifications is understanding of ethics, which most of you would have as physicians. Strong communication skills, another one which most of us have because we are good with our patients. Research experience, when you look at the job application and you basically look at they all want experience in research, and it's always okay to apply even if you don't have that research. Just be honest and let them know that, you know what, you're new to it. If you do get some research experience, it is valued because that's kind of what they're looking at, just because there's so much to know and every little bit counts. Some of the roles in the buckets that I talked about earlier, I broke it down. So clinical trials, they do have certain positions that are available. Clinical research physician, also called sub-I, which you move up to a PI, principal investigator, or clinical investigator is what it's called. There's also clinical research associates who do the similar things as the PI, and I'll go into this a little bit more. Medical science liaisons and medical monitors are all under the clinical trial umbrella. Pharmacovigilance is more of the drug safety physician, drug safety angle. Regulatory affairs are more for big pharma. They basically, I'll go into it a little bit later, but like the physicians that kind of give their medical expertise for big pharma, and medical writers who create content for most of these other fields as well. Clinical research physicians, they work with the scientists and project management team to develop the protocols. And the protocols are kind of the standards that we follow when we're looking at the clinical trial. They use their medical knowledge in determining if a patient could be included and excluded based on certain criteria for the study, because what we're looking at is the data. They oversee the patient recruitment and screening, and then they determine if that participant is suitable for the study, because sometimes they may not be, and you have to explain why. This is kind of what I do as a clinical research physician at BioFortis. Medical care of the patient is what you're doing. So sometimes it can be administering medications or drugs. If we're in a pharma study and we have to administer the injection and watch for any side effects and monitor safety. We also have to report, monitor adverse events and health status changes. So if they come in, tell you I had a pneumonia or they had a side effect from this drug, we have to document some of those things and make sure that is reported to the appropriate authority. Data collecting and reporting, this is why it's important for physicians to be a part of this team, is because we accurately can collect data and report it in a very concise and consistent manner. Sometimes when they get it from patients or from pharmacists or people who work at a pharmacy, it may not be as medically accurate, which is why they need our expertise. Protocol adherence and compliance is kind of important to make sure that we have patient safety and data integrity, to make sure that we get valid and reliable results for the study, because this is what can cause this drug to go into post-marketing. Communication and collaboration is huge, and we really do work with a lot of scientists, pharmacists, researchers, sponsors, and they're looking at us to kind of give that medical expertise along with understanding that the patients are safe during these clinical trials. A clinical research associate is kind of like a sub-I, but a little bit of more hands-on with the clinical study. They basically look at the logistics of the study, when things should come in, when things are scheduled. They also have to basically be very good about conducting the study safely and ethically. It's a really good start for physicians if there is a clinical research associate position. I feel like the pay is not as comparable as it would be for sub-I and PI, but it's a good start. And if you did this, it might be a way to get into something a little bit bigger down the line. Medical science liaisons they're field-based. So basically you're not in an office, you could be, but you're moving to sites and you're basically the bridge between the companies and healthcare providers. This can be in pharma, biotech, and medical device industries. So we use medical science liaisons for drug safety because if a patient reports something and a doctor reports something and there's a discrepancy, our medical science liaisons are the ones that go out and kind of clarify and get us the information we need to make the determination of what we are looking for and what we're reporting. So they provide scientific expertise and advice. They bridge the gap between the pharma and healthcare professionals, and this is another really good start into clinical research. And I know with Seek, and conferences for drug safety that I've been to, there are medical science liaison positions for physicians as well as medical writers. I don't know a whole lot about them because I don't do it, but I think that Seek does give a good overview of this as well. Medical monitor is basically a physician or medical personnel that oversees the study and is kind of like auditing or an extra pair of eyes on maintaining standards and adhering to the trial protocol. And they offer medical expertise to make sure, again, that the patient is safe during and after clinical trials. So they go throughout the study and even into post-marketing. Drug safety physician, this is what I do for an East Coast-based company. We basically review a database and looking at charts or looking at a database to make sure that the patient is safe. So if they report a adverse event, and we basically have to determine the causality of the event related to, if it's related to our drug in our trials as well as in the post-marketing environment. Regulatory affairs physicians, these are what I'd seen when I was looking at pharma. These are some of the jobs that I'd seen that was out there that I didn't know anything about. So I had called friends who worked in pharma and said, "What is this about?" And it was basically like an out-facing type of position where you're the medical expert and you're required to give your expertise and knowledge to make sure that the pharma company and medical device companies are complying with ethics, laws, and standards. So they advise on these clinical trials, they advise on product development and regulatory submissions of how it should be reported. Again, you're continuing to maintain patient safety and quality of care. Medical writer, this is another one that Seek was really good about. I actually went to a physician's conference and they did have medical writers talking about creating health-related content, making sure that it's scientifically accurate and clear for patients, for the public, for healthcare professionals, and for regulatory bodies. They are really good with working with scientists as figuring out protocols, and there's a lot of roles for this as well. I'm not well versed in it, but there's a lot out there for physicians in this if you do like to write. It's a slide that I put in there because I felt like this was me a couple years ago when I went to Seek, that there's more to you than meets the eye. And it was so encouraging to see physicians talking to other physicians about what else is out there and what you can do when you're more than a doctor, right? Because what I was told was that you're still smart, you're still hardworking, you're still compassionate, and that just because you're changing your career doesn't mean that that ends and that you can do something more with it. All it means is that you have to take small steps and take the courage to kind of feel like you can do this, and you will. How to move forward. So some of the tips that helped me was really just getting your updated resume. So I didn't really look at a resume because when you're done with medicine in a way, in the field, you don't need it. And for practice, you don't really need it. You just say, I'm a family physician. But when you update your resume and you start networking with other people, they want your resume, so have it ready. When you network with other people at conferences, so if you're interested in drug safety and clinical research, I'll put some slides up there about links to sites that do have conferences available. It's good to network. It's good to put yourself out there on LinkedIn, and it's good to talk about your plans with other physicians because there are physicians that do clinical research that have left clinical practice and are willing to help you kind of get your foot in the door. So you could talk to them about what you're interested in, learn more about it. I did also search up clinical research jobs and opportunities that are available online, and there you'll see a lot of stuff, and you may be very well overqualified for, but if you're interested in learning about it, it's not like you shouldn't look at these positions. It's a good way to get in or try a side gig, and if you do like it, move up from there. You also want to look for companies that align with your specialty of interest. So I feel like when I was looking at pharma, I was like, okay, they have a pipeline for derm drugs, and I can do derm in primary care, but I'm not specialized in derm or neurology or GI or hemonc. But knowing that you can look at these interests to you, like I liked food, nutrition, and supplements, and which is why Biofortis was interesting to me because that's what they were studying and that's what they were doing their research on. And I didn't get a lot of that experience in family medicine, but it was nice to be like, this is what I like. So figuring out what you like and kind of aligning it with these companies really does give you an upper edge as well as them. They know you're interested and they're willing to kind of say, okay, if you're interested, we want this kind of person. Use your starting experience to move you forward. Like when I started drug safety, I was a consultant. I was learning how to do it. I was learning about the system, learning about the standards, and using that experience is what made me move forward into clinical research. And it really did help on my resume and looking for that job. And be willing to be a team player because you are going to be working with larger teams as you might have had in clinic. It was really just my nurse and my medical assistant, but now it's like collaborating with sponsors and like scientists and biostatisticians and medical writers and project managers and data management. And it was all corporate jargon to me initially, but you do learn as you go along. So don't be overwhelmed and don't be scared of it. It's doable. A good start, some people will take courses on how to get into clinical research or learn about clinical research because I did feel that when I looked at pharma, the hardest part was joining clinical research and not being trained. And so really finding a CRO is nice and that a smaller CRO is good because you get hands-on training. But if you aren't able to, this is a good start is just looking at clinical practice websites because this is a standard for design, conduct, monitoring, auditing, recording, and reporting of clinical trials. So it kind of teaches you a little bit about that. The other two websites I put on for clinical research associates, CRAs, and for physicians in clinical research. And this is a good resource for looking for conferences, networking with other people, seeing what else is out there, just reading about it so that you're familiar with it, which is really helpful because when you get into it, it's just so big and broad, but it does help kind of knowing which area you're looking at and what interests you. So those are some of the tips that I had. And I'm also available if anybody has any questions or would like to kind of talk through at least what I know I can help you with. Yep.
Liz, thank you so much. I guess I'm anybody. I'll ask you some questions. I'm writing some stuff down here.
Sure.
So, what I think I heard this, but I forgot. What is your current title at the CRO? Are you a principal investigator,
I'm
sub,
a principal investigator. Yeah.
or you're a PI? Okay, like Magnum.
Yes.
What's your typical day like? Like,
Typically, I mean, it's a lot less stress, but when we have clinical trials coming in, I get into my office at 7 a.m. and I leave at 3, which is great, right? I work part-time there because there's another physician that shares my spot. And the two physicians that retired is how I came about this job. But when I get into work, it's like you're constantly looking at labs and kind of seeing if the patient's labs look like, is there any issue? Are they safe to be in the study? We have meetings basically with the whole team and kind of looking at this is the study protocol review. We're all looking at it together. Medically, what do you think? Should these drugs be used? If they're excluded, we're looking at, let's just say if it's a nutrition study and we're looking at choline, are there drugs or supplements that the patient is on that has extra choline because we want them to have this dose? So your medical expertise is really valued because you have scientists, but they don't understand the clinical acumen, the background you come from. And so they will constantly, the CRCs or the CRAs, clinical research assistants, will also ask you questions like, is this person okay? They're on this kind of birth control. Can they be in the study? Because the protocols that we have are very specific, and some of those questions they may not know because they're non-clinical, so they're coming to us for it. And then if we do have studies where the patient needs a physical, they're scheduled for a physical, they're scheduled for an EKG. Sometimes they're scheduled to get an injection for a study that we're doing for pharma. Sometimes they're just coming in for vitals and labs, and we're looking at those labs. So all day long, we're getting kind of asked medical questions like you would in a family practice clinic constantly. And you're seeing patients and you're seeing labs and you're kind of interpreting it. But along with the corporate side, you're also being helped to design protocols to give your recommendations. And now with the BioFortis, we're also doing a lot of video stuff, which is fun for me because I like video and writing to kind of do scripting so that our patients can find our landing sites easy and understand the study before they decide if they want to do it or not, because studies are completely voluntary.
awesome. Are you on call at all?
I am on call, but it's for labs and it's not as crazy as it used to be in family medicine. I mean, I might get called once a month on a critical lab value.
All right. Any 7 to 3, any nights or weekends?
No, actually, the other team members do come in because the clinical research associates are the ones that run the logistics of the study. So they sometimes might have to do a Saturday morning, and I did have to do a couple Saturdays, but I heard that it's been like 6 or 7 years since you had to do a Saturday morning, and it was really they're very so accommodating about if you're doing extra, take off the half a day the next day. So it's very flexible, very appropriate. It's not like you're slogging and hustling.
How much charting is there to do?
There's a lot of charting. I mean, it's not so much the EMR, the electronic medical record stuff. It's more actually handwritten because it has to be sent to regulatory. A lot of the CRAs do a lot of the entering manually, but I do have to write, document everything because it is looked at by sponsors, by regulatory authorities. So we document the heck out of everything. So that part is a lot, but it doesn't hold you back. Like I feel like the pace is a lot less, and I do get a lot of time to research and to learn, which is huge. Is this family medicine? I felt like we were just constantly moving, and there was this 15-minute intervals or 20-minute intervals, and you're always running behind. You can never catch up. And with clinical research, I feel like I can actually look up this drug, and it's kind of nice to be able to study it, know it well, and to give my medical expertise with that background.
And how would you compare the intellectual stimulation, intellectual challenge of this job with being an OCMED primary care or urgent care physician, kind of your practice settings?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I feel like, well, at least from my background in family med, I was like the jack of all trades, but master of none. And I feel like with this, it gives me the opportunity to be a really cool environment to learn, to be a scientist and to research. And it feels like it makes me so much smarter. And I'm not hustling, but I'm actually feeling like I have the time to bring what I know and to actually dive deeper into things, which is so great for me because I felt like I could never keep up. I was never having time to kind of research, okay, this patient needs this, but I don't have time to look at it right now. So I got to go home and look at it. And then I got to get back to that patient, but then there's 13 other people waiting, you know? So it's tough. But this, I feel like, oh, I can actually look at this. I can call the patient back. We can have a discussion. I can document it, and I'm moving on to the next one. And there's no hustle because the team works that way. I have another physician covering me. We all kind of think the same, and we're all communicating all the time and collaborating together. So what I'm saying is also being said by three other people, so that that patient is the subject is understanding it. So it's really, really, it's incredible to me, Jim, like to see the difference between hustling in primary care and hustling in research. It's not a hustle, let me tell you. It's just so much nicer with just how it's done. I wish that family practice could be that way for some because I feel like that causes a lot of burnout, and this really gives you the longevity.
God bless. Let me ask you this. Are these studies, I'm not a doctor, I'm so ignorant, but are
No,
these
that's fine.
studies only in academic medical centers or near them? Are they in all parts of the country, in rural areas? Like, where are they at? Because it seems obviously you have to go in. This is not like a remote type
Right.
situation. So
Yeah.
is it pretty diverse in terms of the geography of this? Or maybe
It is. I mean, I feel like the bigger cities definitely have an advantage, and where pharma is concentrated definitely has an advantage. So, I mean, I'm in Chicago, and I work at a company in Boston, and I worked in a company in Philadelphia now. And so it's like there is a lot of university sites, but we just have to find those universities that are willing, and most of them are medical universities. If there's a good medical university, they probably would have sites for clinical research. But the CROs are smaller and they're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Like I work in a small Biofortis, but it's a French company that has multiple sites. So really just kind of educating yourself about what's out there because I really didn't know. Looking at what CROs are in your area or in your state is helpful just as a start, or even universities that conduct clinical research, just searching those up would help.
So how would you find CROs that are active in your state and in your therapeutic area? Are there databases? Are there networking? What would you do, Liz?
Really, like I actually listened to a podcast about a person who did it, and they basically just went to the university and said, do you guys conduct clinical research? And do you know any CROs, if you don't, that do it? There are websites for it too. I can look and kind of put it in an email, but like there are sites that you can search for CROs, clinical research organizations. And then if you're interested, like clinical research organizations in nutrition or clinical research in pharma, but pharma companies, I live really close to certain ones too, and you could ask them, you could call somebody that works there and just be like, what are some areas that you could use physicians for? What are CROs that you are working with? Because it is hard to find if you don't really know what to look for.
And so how'd you get your gig?
Interestingly, networking with people I knew. I literally told a friend who was our financial planner for many years, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking to possibly walk away from clinical medicine. I don't know what I really like. I might like pharma." He basically said, "There's a physician who's doing pharma. Why don't you talk to her?" I talked to her. She's the one who's hooked me up with Scalera, with Sushma, and basically said, "Why don't you talk to her?" She's she's one person that's willing to train. And she was training three other people at the same time. So she said, "Would you want to be the flex person?" Because I was still doing clinical medicine. And I said, "Sure, I'll do 5 hours a week, you know?" So I was able to do 5 hours a week, train with her, and then do more when I left clinical medicine. And then my other job, I was actually talking to another physician who was a hospitalist, and basically she was burnt out, had two kids, didn't know how to manage. Her husband is a physician as well. And I basically told her what I was doing. I said, "I'm going to leave and I'm going to do pharma." And she got the Biofortis job. And she basically randomly ran into me when our kids were in college classes together, and I basically said, "Hey, how's the job?" And she's like, "Oh, I love it." And I said, "Okay, great. If they're looking for a physician, let me know." And she was like, "Actually, the other one's leaving." And so that's how I got it. So it's
Networking,
good.
networking, networking.
Yeah, talking about what you want and maybe just putting it out there because you never know who's listening. And then when I went to Seek, there was so many opportunities, but it was just almost like so many out there that you didn't even know where to start. And they were a lot from other states. So I was like, okay, I need something local. So really just talking. And then when I was looking at pharma, I had 5 friends that worked in pharma. They weren't physicians. They were doing support and IT and other stuff. And I said, hey, and they gave me the recruiter and they basically said, just talk to them and see what you like and see what they need. And that's a huge start.
And obviously LinkedIn could probably help too to find people that are in pharma that you don't even know it, that you might be,
Yeah.
hooked into where you can get an introduction. And the job titles are typically, as you discussed, clinical research associate, sub-investigator, principal investigator. If you were looking on like kind of a job board type thing, those are the things that you would plug in.
Yes, that would be good. I mean, I literally didn't even know that when I started gym. So I literally put in like clinical, I mean, physician opportunities in research, physician opportunities in,
Yeah.
and so what came up was this. But when I broke it down, now that I'm in the field, it is nice to look for clinical research, so physicians or drug safety physicians if you like doing a little bit of clinical and still doing a little bit more of pharma. Because if you choose to leave clinical completely, you can do more as like a director or like an executive at that level. But this is a good start, is kind of what I found.
I guess we'll talk about that in a second. So at the sub-investigator, principal investigator level,
Mhm.
on an hourly basis, how does it compare to being a primary care doctor approximately? And I know your mileage may vary.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was hard to negotiate because I kind of really was like, oh, this is a 2, 3 days a week job and it's 7 to 3 and there's not a lot of call and it's a lot less stress. So I was like, win-win, you know? So there is a definite pay cut. Like as primary care, like there's a ceiling. And I feel like with research too, there is a ceiling. And it was like maybe 75% of what you would make as a physician. But my husband works 4 days a week and he does inpatient, outpatient. He makes great money. And I wasn't even making that much and I was working part-time because I was trying to manage both at home. So for me, the pay cut really didn't matter. And then the fact that I had the drug safety job to supplement the lower clinical research job, it kind of made even. And I was okay with it because one was remote from home and I could get my stuff done at home, take care of the kids, as well as the other one where it was only 2, 3 days a week. So you could kind of negotiate, but I know when I looked at like other big pharma companies, they didn't really have a lot of options for part-time, but full-time, you're a corporate employee, so you really do have to be there in person or remote on your computer. So it's tricky, but you can find things and you can also say this is what I'm looking for, or find maybe a share job with someone else that might want to do it with you. That's an
Yeah, so
opportunity.
part-time is great. Now, one of the things that I have heard is if you want to work for a pharmaceutical company where the sky's the limit in terms of earnings and growth and everything else, so there can
Yeah.
be a lot of turnover and buyouts and failures and things like that, that starting with building up your resume with experience at a CRO and
Mhm.
getting kind of the lingo and everything else is an excellent way to build your resume. Could you comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think anything that gets your toe or foot in the door just builds your resume because what they're really looking for is do you understand the pharma industry? And industry is so big and broad and bad that sometimes you walk into it as a family physician or a physician that left clinical and you're like, have no idea about the business corporate world. And you're right, like you walk in not knowing, but that 6 months or year of knowledge you grow so much. And I think I felt like I didn't realize I was growing so much. And it was other people that kind of said, hey, you've done this. This is what's got you this next job, you know? And even my boss at Biofortis is like, because you have the drug safety job, you're at the back end, now you're at the front end, and now you've got this whole experience. So
You
you
know,
can go to pharma and basically say, hey, I've basically done it all. And there's so many other things in pharma, like clinical development, there's medical affairs, there's regulatory affairs, that if you chose to, once your foot is in the door, you can easily just be like, hey, I've done this, I want to try this. And they're very accommodating, especially if they know you and they know that you're a good worker and that you're smart, and who of us isn't, right?
and the last question, the most important question, how's your 24-weeker doing?
He's great. He's great. He's in 6th grade. I mean, he's got his challenges, but he's moving along. So, but thank you for asking, Jim. I did have a picture of both of them in there at the end, and I took it out because I'm like, you might want to share the slides. I'm like, nobody wants to see my kids, but he's great, doing well. Yeah,
We do
thank
like to see the kids, and they're adorable. Thank you very much, Dr. Antu. Very helpful. I mean, an excellent way for either part-time or to get your foot in the door, or if you really like, being there and with the patients and whatnot as a CRO, do some networking and make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, NSEEK was really great in giving me the opportunity to network. And then the drug safety conference is there. And then there's so much like on those websites that I shared that I looked at really quickly to be like, hey, there's all these opportunities you can do, even the biotech world and the device world, stuff that I've heard about at these conferences that I'm not even aware of. But if people are interested in that, it's definitely out there.
Thank you again, and I can't wait for the movie to come out. That again, the name of that is Text M for Murder. Keep your
Yes.
eye out.
Thanks, Jim, for the plug. I'll keep you posted. I'm sure you guys will come out for it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care.